Look what I found at my local farm stand. Prunes! Ever wondered how German bakers get those glossy, jammy prunes on top of a tart that doesn't get soggy in a hurry? Today I'll show you how to make the perfect southern German prune tart. The right dough and slicing the fruit just right makes all the difference. Zwetschgendatschi, as it's called in German, is a staple in southern Germany and it is used as a main course on occasion. It's a simple tart and there's generally two bases that are used. The first one is a more savory basic yeast dough, which you would find in like a focaccia bread or something. And the other one is a sweet dough that's called Mürbteig in German. It is a simple dough made of fat, egg, sugar and flour. I'm going to show you how to core these things and cut them properly. But first let's start with the dough. I'm going to use my trusty hand mixer here. You could use a KitchenAid or just knead it by hand. It's up to you. It's not a very complicated dough. Let me quickly switch out my cutting board here for the proper dough kneading board. We need 400 grams or 2.5 cups of simple all-purpose flour. We need a 3/4 cup or 150 grams of sugar. I'm using half brown sugar, half regular sugar, just for a little extra flavor. Then we need 2 eggs. And we need about 1 1/3 sticks of butter. That's 180 grams. Let's start with the flour. And of course, like in any dough or sweet, you cannot miss a pinch of salt. I'm making a little well here. Simply add sugar, eggs, and the butter, which should be still cold. Not ice cold, but cold butter, so don't use room temperature butter because it's going to get too soft. If this ends up being too stiff, you can always add a tablespoon of milk or water to get the right consistency. Now simply mix this together, and once it gets too stiff, continue kneading by hand. My bowl is a little small here, but I wanted to use a glass bowl so you can see what's going on. I think that's good enough for crumbling up the butter. I think I'm going to go for hands. If you wanted to, you could add a little bit of lemon zest. That would add some extra zing to this dough. You want to work this dough quickly so your hands don't transfer too much heat into the butter. Otherwise, this gets kind of a fatty mess. Form a ball, stick it into a plastic bag or cover it with cling film and put it in the fridge for about half an hour. When preparing the prunes, it depends on what kind of shape you're aiming for. Is it a rectangular tart or is it a round tart? That will change the way you slice these prunes. I'm making a fairly small one here, just a small baking sheet. So mine is going to be rectangular, which actually makes it easier. You see that little line up here? That is the line you want to cut it. For a rectangular shape, you either slice them in half or you only cut them halfway through and fold them open into 2 halves. I'm going to go for halves. If you hit the line right, the stone is going to be like this and not vertical. See the line? This time I'm not going to cut it at the line. As you can see, the stone now remains embedded in the prune and it's hard to take out. I'm doing halves. For a rectangular sheet, you can also do folded halves. Cut the prune along the line halfway and fold it open to remove the stone. Now you have 2 connected halves, which are quicker to stack later. And when you really want to do round shapes, you cut them like we just did. Fold them open at the half. And then depending on the size of your prunes, you make a half cut up here. That's much easier if you want to do a round shape. And while I keep destoning these prunes, how about you give this video a like because it really helps the channel, and subscribe so you don't miss another episode. With the prunes taken care of, it's time to work on our dough. I'm just rolling this out into a large rectangle that should be a little bit bigger than my sheet here. You want to have the dough at about, let's say, roughly 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit less. Just pretty much like any other pie crust you would do. Okay, let's see if we can transfer this. This is actually the brown sugar, in case you're wondering. Now we can simply transfer it over. Now let's push this into the corners. And then let's fix any tears and something. Just take a little bit of dough, push it in. If it doesn't go all the way up on the rim, just make it. It doesn't have to be perfect. All it has to do is fill out that sheet. Again, don't play around with this dough for too long because your hands transfer heat and you don't want that butter to melt. In my childhood days, I would be in the kitchen eating that dough. Of course, today we know better. Take a fork and put a few holes in here, like so. And then use a few breadcrumbs. You don't necessarily have to do this, but it helps a lot when you have very juicy prunes, because those breadcrumbs will suck up some of that moisture and then you don't end up with a soggy crust. All that's left to do now is to stack your prunes in here. And that's done in kind of a shingle way. You know, like you would do a roof. I'm missing a few prunes here. Usually the 2 pounds for this amount of dough is enough. If this happens to you that you're just missing a few prunes or you end up somewhere short, take some tin foil. Build yourself an artificial tinfoil wall and then push that in here. All you have to do now is take a knife, cut your crust short, and there you go. You know what, let me shorten this even further and move these in here. Then we can get this nice and square. Now we're talking. Now let's beautify that corner a little bit. There we go. Sprinkle it with a little bit of cinnamon and sugar before it goes into the oven. And put on a handful of slivered almonds. That done, put it into the oven at about 360 degrees for 20 minutes. And here's our tart. Looks like it's done. All you have to do is let it cool and enjoy it. And if you want to see how you could use these prunes in a sweet dumpling, I'll put a link to the video right here.